I love Sam Raimi. Would I say he's the best director ever? No, definitely not. Would I say that he's the best currently working? No, I wouldn't go that far. But would I say that he's an incredible filmmaker? 110% yes. Only Sam Raimi can make Sam Raimi movies. There have been plenty of homages and imitators over the years, but no one can make a movie quite like him. So when I heard that he was directing a Doctor Strange movie, I was beyond ecstatic. Then after all that time of waiting and anticipating, the movie came out. And a lot of people did not like it. There were complaints that many of the movie's stylistic choices didn't work, that there weren't enough alternate universes explored in the movie, and that there weren't enough cameos. In my personal life, I've met many people who said the movie was bad and is just another weak Phase 4 entry in the MCU. Obviously, everyone has the right to their opinion, but I want to discuss why I believe this film is absolutely incredible. First things first, I believe Wanda is one of the best villains that's ever been in a superhero movie. I watched WandaVision back in 21 and thought it was decent. It was cool to see some stylistic change in the MCU, but since finishing it, I've never really had a desire to go back and watch it. However, I am thankful that it exists, since it allowed Multiverse of Madness to hit the ground running. While I'm not crazy about having to watch an entire miniseries in order to fully understand what's going on in a movie, one benefit of it is displayed here. Before the movie even starts, we have a complete understanding of who Wanda is. There's no need to spend an extra half an hour developing her motivations and goals here, since WandaVision already did all of that. It lets the film focus on everything else going on instead of having to juggle a villain origin subplot amongst the already full cast of characters in the movie. But what exactly makes Wanda such a compelling villain? Well, for one, the movie properly displays just how powerful she is. In the fight at Kamartaj, we see just how easily she's able to decimate everything that Steven and his allies are able to throw at her. Wanda hardly ever struggles to keep up with what Steven throws at her, and even when Strange is able to slow her down, moments later she's back up and is able to gain the upper hand. And his first fight isn't the only time Wanda is able to overpower Steven. None of the characters in the film are able to do anything to stop her until the climax of the film. Seeing our heroes constantly lose to Wanda makes her so intimidating and subsequently makes her defeat all the more satisfying. Every time she shows up, there's so much dread and anxiety since we have a proper understanding of just how powerful she is. When the film consistently shows that the hero can lose and that the villain is a proper force to be reckoned with, it makes all of the scenes with her all the more engaging. In another Marvel movie like Shang-Chi, the implication is that Tony Leung's character is supposed to be a threatening presence, but the movie doesn't do much to properly convey that. Here, the movie does the work to create a threatening force and cemented Wanda as one of the best villains in the entire franchise. Something else that makes Wanda so compelling is the fact that she's a character that we as an audience have had a history with. Thus, we're able to easily sympathize with her goals. Ever since we first met this character, we've seen how her life has been filled with tragedy. Pietro died in Age of Ultron, Vision died in Infinity War, and she was unable to keep her children after the events of WandaVision. It's easy for us to understand why she would be willing to go to such great lengths to achieve a sense of peace. Now, Wanda is a great antagonist, but this film also gives us a great protagonist. Stephen Strange is one of the most underrated characters in the MCU, in my opinion. While he may have started off being essentially a diet version of Tony Stark, now that we've had plenty of films with him, we're able to see a truly three-dimensional character. Up until this point, Strange has been a very isolated character. Outside of Wong, Strange has been a character who kept to himself and did things his way. In No Way Home, Steven is dead set on sending all of the villains back to their own universes to die, but that causes him and Peter to get into a fight. And by the end, Steven sees how Peter was correct in his belief that they were able to be saved. In Infinity War and Endgame, he made sure that everything went according to his plan so that Thanos would end up being defeated. While his plan did end up working, early on in this film we see that his choice was far from being absent of consequence. At the beginning of the wedding sequence, Strange talks to one of his former co-workers who passive-aggressively pesters him and asks if there was anything else that could have been done. And we also see that Steven was unable to end up with Christine. Right from the get-go, it's clear that Steven is a character who is unfulfilled and lonely. He does try to hide it when Christine talks to him, but we obviously know that Steven is far from being content.
I'm happy.
Good. You deserve it.
As the film goes on, Steven learns about three other versions of himself. The first one is the version we see in the film's opening. When he tries to do things his way, he ends up being killed and nearly gets America Chavez killed. Later on, he learns about this version who took things into his own hands in fighting Thanos and wound up losing the trust of the Illuminati. Then, near the end of the film, Steven comes into contact with this version of himself who has become so isolated and desperate to get with Christine that he has destroyed himself with dark magic. All of these alternate versions of Steven may be much worse than the version that we've seen before, but they all have specific traits that this main version has.
In the grand calculus of the multiverse,
Your sacrifice
means infinitely more than their lives.
Are you happy, Stephen? It's the question that Christine Palmer asked me at her wedding. I said, yes, of course. I'm happy.
All of these alternate versions are able to show our version of Steven the road that he is headed towards. What I love about this is that this film is able to take the multiverse concept and use it to its fullest potential. We've had so many multiverse movies over the last 5 years, and so many of them wind up feeling like they exist solely to give us cameos and fan service. And don't get me wrong, this movie absolutely has that, but that's not the only purpose that the framework of the multiverse has in this film. The concept of traveling to other universes is able to give Steven a proper character arc here. By the end of the film, he's able to be more emotionally vulnerable, but that's only because he was able to see what would happen when he closes himself off from being open with others.
I love you. I love you in every universe. It's not that I don't want to care for someone or have someone care for me. It's just I get scared.
By the end of the film, when Charlize Theron's character shows up, he's open to listening to others and following their plan, when in the past, he never would have done that.
Because, Steven, you have to be the one holding the knife. And I always respected you for it, but I couldn't love you for it.
I love that this film gave Steven a proper character arc. In the original Doctor Strange, Steven did grow as a character, but as I mentioned before, the whole movie felt like it was solely trying to give us the new Tony Stark. Where we have a character who is wealthy, selfish, and unfriendly, who has a tragic event happen to him that drastically changes who he is as a person. Here, Steven is able to go on a unique journey that we haven't seen another character go on in this universe before, and it works really well. Now, I quickly want to go through some things I love about this movie before moving on to my final point. The cinematography in this movie is fantastic. There's so many inventive shots and unique uses of framing and movement. Even a small little moment will have certain shots that are just pure eye candy. Danny Elfman's score is really solid. I'm not much of a music person, but there's lots of tracks in here that sound great and aid the film really well. The end credits of the movie look absolutely beautiful. In a lot of ways, they're very reminiscent of Drag Me to Hell. This shot of Strange in America going through all the universes to this day still blows my mind. The music fight is one of the most creative sequences that has ever been put in a superhero movie. It's such a creative way to do a fight scene, and I wish we got more stuff like this in other Marvel movies. Benedict Cumberbatch turns in a stellar performance. I specifically love how well he plays this alternate version of Strange. He's able to convey the campy, Raimi tone while still making the character feel intimidating. Also, his physical acting in the third act when he's playing the resurrected version of Strange is something that I didn't even pick up on until my fourth watch of the movie. It feels so natural and effortless, even though in reality it probably took a lot of focus and hard work to pull off successfully. The last thing I want to mention is that I think many of the criticisms aimed at this movie are not very valid. This movie not having the characters explore a bunch of different universes doesn't make it a bad movie. Just because we only spend time in 3 universes never diminishes how good the action set pieces are, how well paced the movie is, and how great the VFX look. Many people have complained about the screenplay being weak, which I would strongly disagree with. All of the characters in the film serve a purpose, and there's no wasted time in the movie. I love the setup at the beginning of Steven's corpse, which comes back at the end. Wanda's conclusion with seeing the alternate version of herself and having her worst fears come true when her children are afraid of her was a surprising but satisfying moment to see happen. And it felt like a very conclusive note for her character, although most likely we'll end up seeing her again. I absolutely adore this movie, and I believe it is criminally underrated. I can't wait to see what Raimi does in the future, and I hope that you can see why I love this movie as much as I do. And I want to thank all of you for watching.